The following was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic through Zoom meetings in accordance with local health guidelines. Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Hi, welcome back to another CSRM podcast. Today we have a wonderful opportunity and great pleasure to be with Danny Downing. Danny, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks, Greg. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this, and part of it is because you're celebrating an anniversary. And of course, we know you've been married for a while as well, but this is a ministry anniversary, 20 years at Johnson Ferry. Can you believe it?
I can't. I am so thankful and humbled that God has allowed us to serve here in this congregation for 20 years. I never would have thought that as a young seminary student that that's possible.
So let's just back up and let's give people some background and history. Tell us a little bit about your own coming up and faith journey, and how did you come to faith, and what was some of those instrumental things or instrumental people in your life?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and my dad was a junior high teacher. And when I was about 2 years old, he responded to a call to ministry. And so our family moved to Atlanta, where he served on a church staff as youth and recreation minister. And so grew up in the church with two Bible-believing parents and always going to church. And when I was 8 years old, I asked Christ to be a part of my life, and my parents were instrumental in that. I came and got in the car on a Sunday night after being at a kids event while my parents were at other stuff. And I imagined that I was talking a lot about what happened and what we did in class, those kind of things as we drove home. I don't really remember, but the thing I do remember was my dad said, "Hey, if you want to know about how to be a Christian, then we would love to talk more about that." So I'm assuming I was talking about having a relationship with Jesus, or Jesus died on the cross or something. And that's how my parents responded. And I got ready for bed because it was a school night and went back into our den and sat down, and my parents led me through a plan of salvation. And right there in my den, prayed to ask Jesus to be a part of my life. And Greg, I'm so thankful. This was in a little town called Kingsport, Tennessee when this happened. And one of the things I'm thankful for now is that church, small church, really had a great discipleship process in place. I immediately, I was in a Southern Baptist church. I walked the aisle on the next Sunday, told my pastor I'd asked Jesus into my heart, immediately got baptized, and went through about a 6-week training process of what all this meant and how to begin a walk with Jesus. So thankful that that small church had that in place. And so that was a key thing for me, is just getting started and growing in my faith. I remember they gave me a Bible. We underlined the Roman roads of salvation, went through all that.
Yeah.
It was just so encouraging as I look back that church had such a great discipleship process for children that I took for granted for a lot of years. And then my family moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and when I was in the 10th grade in my youth group at a summer camp, I felt God calling me into ministry. And so that led my life on a new path to get prepared for ministry. And I knew before that I thought two things. I might want to do ministry. I might want to own a sporting goods store. So even back then, God was using sports as a draw to my personality. And it ended up being sports ministry and not owning a sporting goods store. But so from then on, I kind of chose college and seminary preparation, thinking that God had called me into ministry, and I wanted to be as prepared as I could. And so again, when I did that, thankful for that church, we had about 6 people in the youth group that probably over a 9-month span felt called to the ministry. And that
Wow.
church had a counselor on staff that got us together as a group for a few weeks to just talk about what does it mean to discover God's will for your life and a call to ministry. And so again, just God providing for me through the local church. And so that's a little bit about my heritage and my call to ministry.
You know, Danny, and you're aware of this because of what we do with CSRM and the Overwhelming Victory Press and the book that was most recently out about the saving of sports ministry. And what you just talked about there is something that I think I'd like you to speak to it. Is that I think that we don't necessarily do as well as we could in sports ministry in the local church, and that is what you just said. We had a great discipleship heart in that church, and if the call really is in Matthew, the Great Commission really is to go and make disciples, and you also mentioned, I think, the 2 things there: baptize and to teach all that I have taught. And that's in essence what you said. And I think sometimes that in our sports ministry, you know, at the end of our league, we'll have somebody proclaim a verbal gospel, raise your hand, come forward, whatever, and then that's it. I don't know. Am I missing something there? Your life experience just kind of verified that, right?
Yeah. I think it's a good challenge for us in sports ministry, right? I don't know that we've come up with all the answers on that, and probably we'll just keep striving for it. But I think every church is probably in a little bit different situation. But I think our target should always be reach and disciple people for Christ. That's pretty much, as we look at Scripture, that should be kind of the mission statement, or very similar. You can word it a lot of different ways for the local church, and then the core values of each church could look different upon what ministries God's called them to and how they're connecting with their community. But for us in sports ministry, it seems clear to me that our job is to help the church reach and disciple people. And then it just gets into, I think, each church. We know we could do a better job here at Johnson Ferry on the discipling end. And so for us, it's we're at a large enough church that we feel like our primary fit in the church's mission is the reach and evangelism part. Where sports, as you know, is such an awesome way to connect with your lost community. I'm biased, but I think it's the best way. It's a place where God has left the door open for us in a post-Christian America to still connect with people through sports. Every church in America ought to have a sports ministry because of that. But we do have a responsibility to disciple. And so for us, it's how do we come alongside the children's ministry, the student ministry, and the adult ministry to connect these people into the discipling arm of the church. We know that we disciple coaches. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But as far as spiritual growth, where do we partner? How do we work with those ministries? What do we provide? And where do we connect those people that we've reached right into the discipling arm of the church? And we're blessed to have great children's and student ministries that we can do that with. But we know we can get better at that for sure, Greg.
Well, well said. And within CSRM network and the broader church, there are a lot of churches that do infant baptism, and I think being a Baptist church, you're going to do adult baptism, and in my background, that's where I am too. But even the infant baptism churches and denominations, they have a confirmation upon coming to personal faith. They have that public up in front of the church where people make that display of their faith at public, and I think that's one of the things we miss in our sports rec and fitness ministries is that we don't invite the new believer to take that next step And again, I think you and I share this. We would say, yeah, get baptized, get a little wet, whether you dunk like you guys or sprinkle like we do, get a little wet anyway. But I think that when we don't do that, we're missing part of that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think it's our responsibility. And at some churches, the sports ministry may have to own a discipleship class on that. But at a lot of churches where there's a student ministry, a children's ministry that already has that in place, again, I just think it's been neat to watch sports ministry become more evangelistic over the years. When I was a boy, it was about fellowship of the local believer. But I think our next thing is, how do we do discipleship better? And so how do we get way better at keeping that relationship going and connecting them into a process? And like you said, so for us, that's take that next step and be baptized and follow Jesus and live out for him day to day. Here's some ways to study God's word. Here's some groups to connect with. And for other churches, it might be, hey, follow the confirmation process and begin to live your life out for Jesus. So I think it's commanded, right?
Absolutely, it is. It's called the Great Commission, and Danny, you mentioned this, and I think this is really key and crucial too, of connecting with these other people in the church, because those people that are in those other ministries, to get the youth minister coaching in your youth softball league or basketball league, getting the young adult minister to organize the ultimate frisbee league, whatever it is, to connect them, so crucial. And I love the way you connected that. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would just encourage anyone that it really is a staff partnership, a team ministry, and sports is somewhat uniquely qualified in that. A lot of those ministries, the children's ministry, they're focused on a certain age group, but sports touches all age groups. So we really can be a great team player within our staffs, in the big church staff. And then, like, we've just been through a process of about 3 years of training to just care for people as you build relationships, pray for people, right. Look for a chance to share your testimony and have gospel conversations. And all those ministries can be a part of your league and have those gospel conversations. You're bringing the crowd to them.
That's right. Well, I think folks that are watching and listening, we're doing this in the COVID era, and so we're not in our studio. You might hear some background noise or some fading in or out. We apologize. It's not technically what we're used to coming out of the CSRM studios, but I think we're getting the message, and you're getting a really good one with Danny, and I think you're understanding why we wanted to do this. And Danny, I gotta do something here. I'll throw you a little curveball, because there's somebody who found out that we were going to be doing this. And Justin McDonald wanted to chime in on what we're doing. Now, he's driving.
I know. I'm stuck in traffic, so I can be on video.
There you go. So
if I go off, it's because I need to actually pay attention to what I'm doing.
So I hear you. Good to see you, buddy.
You too, man.
Justin McDonald, you are working in a sports ministry in a church in Kentucky. No, not Kentucky. Where are you at now? Missouri.
I don't even know. Arkansas.
Arkansas. I'm geographically challenged, so I apologize. But you wanted to get on this because this guy Danny has had an influence on your life.
Well, everything I've done is his fault. Every place I've landed, it's either his fault or he's helped me get to the next one. So, what has it been now? When it was, you hired me in like August of 2008?
I think that's right.
I think that's right too. So, I'm about to finish my 13th year of ministry, and it's your fault.
We had an awesome. We actually hired Justin before he graduated seminary.
Yes.
Came and worked, and then went back and walked.
That's
Great
true.
decision by our church.
I think so too.
Justin, I think you are one of the evidences of one of the things that I've really appreciated about Danny. And yeah, he does it, but his impact on raising up the next generation of sports, rec, and fitness ministers is been significant. Am I overselling that at all?
No, and you're not. And here's the thing: I only was at Johnson Ferry 2 years, but our relationship has carried on these 13 years, and he's been a bigger influence on my life post Johnson Ferry than even when I was there, because there were some pretty hard times that I went through, and Danny was right there every step of the way. And honestly, where I am now at Geyer Springs was because of a conversation that he and I had when I was trying to decide where to go next, of some potential. And so it was kind of a risk taking the position at Geyer Springs, but it has turned into God really using this. And this is one of the best places I could have landed after what I went through, but also just being able to utilize my skill set in many ways. It's been a good thing. And it was really because I remember a conversation he and I had of what I was looking at and saying the potential at Geyer Springs was really strong. And that intuition turned out to be right, because it's kind of fallen exactly into place, like we had talked about.
Well, you got any good Danny Downey stories?
Well, I've been thinking about it. No. See, here's the thing. This is going to be worse for me than it is for him. So we were, let's see, I think it was my first year. It was a all staff work day, and we were at some place in downtown Atlanta. And let's just say painting is not my skill sets. And from that day on, he gave me the nickname Sherwin because of my bad painting. And that kind of stuck forever, and I'll never forget it. And so that's more of a story against me than it's against Danny. But I'll never forget that, because then everyone called me Sherwin the rest of the time I was there.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Danny's side of that story, but
yeah, we went downtown to the Atlanta mission, which is a mission that takes in men off the streets, homeless men, and we were painting their facility, and so several of us were painting the hall, and poor Justin, he got as much on the floor, I think, as he did.
Yeah. I think it was on me on the floor.
So I was like, hey, let me show you how to paint a little bit so you don't get as much of that. But then we started calling him Sherwin Williams.
That's
and then one time we also called him Shaky for a while.
That's right.
Because he wore a costume. Next. He wore a costume at one of our children's camp that was like a milkshake, and we called him Shaky for a time too.
Well, I think if you're listening, you can't quite see it, but Justin's driving, and if you can't see it, there's big smiles around all three of our faces, because this really is about sports ministry. And when, at the end of the day, we remember the people and we have these experiences together. We've just had some wonderful, wonderful opportunities to be together. Justin, tell me, what are the 2 or 3, at least one, what's the main couple things that you practice in your ministry and your walk with Jesus because Danny modeled it or taught you? How's he really impacted you?
Well, every time that I think I'm going to do something and I think through, I really kind of hear his voice in the back of my head. It's just in terms of how to do things the right way and do things well. Just learning that if the sports aren't good, we don't have the opportunity we haven't earned the right to share Jesus with these families. And so every time I think through something, I actually go through the lens of what would Danny tell me that needs to be better here, or how can we make this as good as possible. And I found myself being the Danny to some of my younger staff that helps us set up stuff. And so, good or bad, he's like my, little sports ministry Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder, making sure the right things are happening where they need to go. But I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I don't look at that negatively. I just know, like, seminary taught me how to do things one way, but Johnson Ferry and Danny specifically taught me how to do things the right way. And no matter what I'm doing, I can look through that lens of every place I've served. I still do things the way that those foundational things that I learned those 2 years that I was there when I was young, and now I'm not so young anymore, but that's okay.
Well, Danny, we have a saying in CSRM that we need to produce reproducing reproducers. And I think that's really true of you. And, Justin went on from you. He went into Kentucky for a while and even became a professor in this area there. And so he's taught students. He's obviously continuing on. And I know that when he found out that we were doing this, he just wanted to get on and honor you and thank you. And Justin, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. And we're going to wrap up this segment of our podcast with Danny, and we're going to come back again. So if you're watching or listening, there will be another segment with Danny. And as you can tell already, there's a lot inside of this man that is worth listening to and paying attention to. But any last words, Justin, before we let you go here?
Danny, you're the best, man. I love getting to talk, and we've talked a lot in this, and I can't wait to continue that. And just I really appreciate everything you've meant, not just for me, but my family and my kids, and just love you, man.
Thanks, buddy. Love you too. I'm proud of you. God's using it in a great way. Keep it up.
Yes, sir. Always.
All right. Well, that's it for this segment, and we will close out, and we'll come back to you with a second segment with Danny Downing in just probably a week or so from now. You'll be able to pick it up on the CSRM website. All that information should be coming across the screen for how you can access it if you're watching it. If not, just go to the CSRM website, and you'll be able to find all of these archived. Thanks to both of you, Danny and Justin.
CSRM's podcasts are a resource provided by the Association of Church, Sports, and Recreation Ministries and its production house, Overwhelming Victory Flicks. This episode was produced by Dr. Greg Linville and edited by Andrew Fouts. For more information about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about our publishing and production houses, visit csrm.org and click on the Resource tab. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.